Question number 3, Andrew Bayley.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance, and it reads, what reports has he received showing why more housing is needed as part of supporting a growing New Zealand economy?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, the Productivity Commission last week released its draft report on using land for housing. It finds New Zealand cities have not been able to provide enough greenfields and brownfields land to meet growing populations, particularly in Auckland, and that planning rules have increased the cost of housing. Among its draft recommendations are that councils do not set requirements which exceed the Building Act for the construction of homes, that there should be better use of existing infrastructure by allowing intensification where supporting infrastructure is in place, and that councils monitor and report on new dwellings and infrastructure delivery to highlight where their regulations are too restrictive.
Supplementary, Mr.
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Andrew Bayley.
What are some of the factors the Productivity Commission points to as affecting the supply of more housing where it's needed?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, the Commission points out that New Zealand's housing supply is only moderately responsive to demand, due mainly to restrictions on land supply and densification. It says that the costs of some urban design requirements may outweigh the benefits, including rules around minimum parking, balconies and interior design, requirements which raise housing costs without delivering enough benefits to justify them. The report also says that some of these council rules may be unlawful. And the Commission says rules around densification are affecting housing supply. The Auckland Plan sets out a 30-year goal of 70% of future growth occurring within existing limits. So achieving these growth targets will require reasonably liberal rules around densification.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
A supplementary question, Andrew Bayley.
What does the Productivity Commission say are the consequences of limits on the supply of housing for the economy?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Commission points out 3 major consequences from council rules around land use. First, the impact on prices has a disproportionate effect on the less well-off, because it is the prices and rents of housing at the bottom end which are most affected by red tape. There is a nationwide shortage of lower-priced new housing, as the Commission's report shows. Second, an unresponsive housing supply is a risk to macroeconomic stability, as well as a barrier to productivity gains by limiting employment opportunities. And thirdly, the cost of housing puts pressure on the public purse. Accommodation supplement and income-related rents will in 2015-16 exceed a cost of $2 billion.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
A supplementary question, Andrew Bayley.
What steps is the government taking to deliver more houses while supporting the growing economy?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, the most important one has been to work closely with Auckland City to understand how we can assist them to expand the land supply and ensure that the required infrastructure can be put in place at reasonable cost and in a timely manner. And the next step in that process will be when we see the Auckland Unitary Plan again, and then we can see whether Auckland City will be able to deliver the supply of housing that its own demand forecasts indicate are required. Alongside that, we have suspended duties and tariffs on building materials, rolled out the Home Start scheme from the 1st of April, ongoing reforms to the Resource Management Act, and in particular lifting the government's investment in the supply of new housing to the Auckland market.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Why, if he believes that the answer lies in more intensification and greenfields development, has he been talking about this for 9 years now while doing absolutely nothing about it for 7 years, while a shortfall of 32,000 houses has built up on his watch?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, over that time, there's been some significant changes. The formation of the single city in Auckland, I'd have to say, well, actually was initiated by the Labor government, and we implemented it. And secondly, we have brought in place a truncated process for the Auckland Unitary Plan, and the member may not realise this, but it's Auckland Council who make the decisions about houses in Auckland. We have worked hard to influence them and will continue to do so.
Question number 4, the Honourable Annette.
My question's to the Minister of Health. What advice, if any, did